All right, so you're looking for a deep dive into the political future of the U.S. beyond 2024. And we've got a really fascinating mix to unpack here.
Well, yeah.
We've got your notes, some really thought-provoking articles, and even an episode from the podcast Now Hiring.
Okay.
It's titled Beyond 2024, The Political Future of the United States.
Yeah, it's a treasure trove of insights.
Yeah.
And you know what's striking is that
Yeah.
no matter who takes the 2024 election, these trends we're about to explore are likely to shape the political landscape for years, even decades.
Exactly. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest themes that jumps out from all these sources is this massive generational shift happening right under our noses.
Yeah.
We're talking millennials, Gen Z, even the up-and-coming Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
By 2030, they'll be the dominant voting bloc.
And that's where things get interesting.
Right.
Because if you look at their political leanings, they tend to be much more progressive than previous generations.
Right.
Climate change, social justice, a more active role for government.
Yeah.
These are the issues they care about deeply.
Yeah.
But here's the big question.
Oh, okay.
Will they actually show up at the polls and translate those concerns into votes?
Right.
Historically,
Yeah.
younger voters haven't been the most reliable when it comes to turnout.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's not a done deal.
Right.
Plus, we can't forget about the other side of the equation.
Oh, absolutely.
The older, more conservative voters, they still hold a lot of sway, especially in those key states that often decide elections.
Yeah, they do.
Right.
Absolutely. And this creates this fascinating push and pull, almost like a slow-motion tug of war for the future direction of the country.
Yeah.
It's not just about who's voting, it's how they're voting.
Right.
And where those votes are concentrated.
Yeah. Speaking of tension, let's talk about this elephant in the room. Political polarization. It feels like the divide in the U.S. is just getting wider and wider.
You're hitting on a major trend here. Both the Democrats and the Republicans seem to be rewarding candidates who cater to their most extreme bases,
Right.
leading to more and more polarized positions. And it's making it increasingly difficult to find that common ground, that space for compromise and collaboration.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed this myself.
Right.
Even in casual conversations with friends and family.
Oh, yeah.
It's like everyone's retreating into their own echo chambers, only hearing voices that agree with them.
Right.
Have you experienced this too?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it raises some serious concerns about the health of our democracy.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
there are some glimmers of hope emerging,
Okay.
even in this polarized landscape.
Yeah.
There are groups like the Forward Party, for example, that are actively trying to bridge this divide
Right.
and create space for more moderate voices.
Yeah.
They advocate for things like ranked choice voting
Okay.
and open primaries
Yeah.
as ways to encourage collaboration and move beyond this two-party system that seems to be feeding the polarization.
It's definitely a noble goal.
Yeah.
But realistically, the U.S. political system is set up in a way that makes it extremely difficult for third parties to gain any significant traction.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
The system itself is almost designed to reinforce this two-party dynamic,
Right.
even as those parties themselves are becoming more and more fragmented internally.
Right.
And this brings us to another force shaping the future technology.
When I was going through all this material, the technology aspect really caught my attention.
Yeah.
We're talking about potentially game-changing shifts,
Oh, yeah.
especially when it comes to things like social media and artificial intelligence.
Technology truly is a double-edged sword when it comes to democracy.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have social media, which, as we've seen, can amplify polarization.
Right.
It creates these echo chambers where people are only exposed to information that reinforces their existing beliefs,
Yeah.
and it's become a breeding ground for misinformation
Right.
and even manipulation.
And it's not just social media, right?
Right.
Think about the potential of AI
Yeah.
to be used in political campaigns.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about micro-targeted ads that are crafted based on your data, your browsing history, even your personality.
Right.
It's almost like the algorithm knows what you're going to think
Yeah.
before you even think it.
Imagine this. You're scrolling through your feed, and you see an ad perfectly tailored to your interests, urging you to vote for a specific candidate.
Yeah.
But what you don't know is that the ad itself was crafted by an AI,
Wow.
analyzing your data to predict your political leanings
Yeah.
and craft a message that will resonate with you on a subconscious level.
Wow.
That's the future we're facing.
It's both fascinating and a little terrifying.
It is.
But I guess it's not all doom and gloom. There's also the potential for technology to be used as a force for good, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about the power of digital organizing. To mobilize those younger voters we were talking about,
Yeah.
it can help them connect with each other, find information,
Mhm.
and participate in the political process
Yeah.
in ways that are relevant to their lives.
Right.
We're also seeing the emergence of new platforms and tools
Mm.
designed to promote healthy debate,
Okay.
fact-checking,
Mm-hmm.
and civic engagement.
So it's not all about AI-powered disinformation campaigns and deepfakes.
Yeah.
It's really about how we choose to use these tools
Yes, exactly.
and whether we can harness their potential to strengthen democracy rather than weaken it.
Technology itself isn't inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's all about the intent behind it
Yeah.
and the choices we make
Right.
as individuals and as a society.
Right. And speaking of the bigger picture, these technological shifts are happening within a global landscape
Yeah.
that's also undergoing some major transformations, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about what's happening within the U.S. Our sources pointed to some significant global shifts that are going to have a ripple effect
Right.
on American politics.
Yeah.
One of the key terms that kept popping up was multipolarity. Could you explain what that means and why it matters?
Multipolarity essentially refers to a world order where power is distributed among several major players,
Okay.
rather than being concentrated in a single dominant nation. Uh, we're seeing this play out in real time with the rise of China as a global power,
Right.
the ongoing tensions with Russia,
Yeah.
and the increasing influence of regional blocs and non-state actors.
It's like the old world order
Yep.
where the U.S. was the undisputed superpower is fading away. And we're entering a new era where the balance of power is much more fluid
Right.
and complex.
Exactly. And this has significant implications
Yeah.
for U.S. foreign policy.
Okay.
It means we can no longer dictate the terms
Right.
of global engagement.
Yeah.
We need to be more adept at navigating a multipolar world,
Okay.
building coalitions, and finding common ground with other nations,
Yeah.
even those with whom we may have significant differences.
It's a much more nuanced
It
and
is.
challenging landscape than the one we've been used to.
Right.
And it's not just about high-level diplomacy.
No.
These global shifts are going to have very real consequences for everyday Americans.
Think about it. Trade wars, cybersecurity threats, climate change.
Right.
These are global issues that transcend national borders and are going to impact everyone.
Yeah.
And they're going to force American politicians to focus more on international cooperation
Right.
and problem solving,
Yeah.
even if it means putting aside some of their domestic political differences.
So in a way, the world itself is pushing us
Yeah.
to think beyond our own borders and consider the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost like a wake-up call.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the interconnectedness of these issues.
Yeah.
The domestic and the global are becoming increasingly intertwined.
Right. Let's bring it back home for a moment
Okay.
and talk about some of the major domestic challenges that are likely to shape the political landscape
Yeah.
in the years to come.
Right, because even as we're grappling with these global shifts,
Yeah.
there are some pretty significant problems brewing
Yeah.
right here in the U.S.
Right.
And according to our sources, there are three big ones that we need to pay attention to.
Okay.
Economic inequality,
Right.
climate change, and declining trust in institutions.
Yeah. Those are the big three. And they're all deeply interconnected.
They are.
Right. Let's start with economic inequality.
Okay.
Rising costs of living, stagnant wages, lack of affordable housing.
Yeah.
These issues are creating a lot of frustration and resentment, and they're likely to fuel political unrest if they're not addressed effectively.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about the sense of fairness, the feeling that the system is rigged against ordinary people,
Yeah.
and that the American dream is slipping out of reach for many.
And then there's climate change,
Right.
which is no longer a distant threat.
No.
We're seeing the impacts of it in real time.
We are.
With more frequent and intense extreme weather events,
Yeah.
rising sea levels, and disruptions to agriculture and ecosystems.
It's getting harder and harder to ignore,
It is. It is.
and it's starting to hit home for people in a very visceral way.
Yeah, it's not just an abstract scientific concept anymore. It's about floods destroying homes, wildfires, ravaging communities,
Yeah.
and extreme heat waves threatening lives.
And this is putting immense pressure
Right.
on our political system to take meaningful action.
Yeah.
The question is,
Yeah.
can our current political structures,
Right.
with all their polarization and gridlock,
Yeah.
actually rise to this challenge?
Right, because it seems like every time there's a chance for progress,
Yeah.
we get bogged down in partisan bickering
Mhm.
and short-term thinking.
Yeah. And this brings us to the third big challenge, declining trust in institutions.
Yeah.
This is perhaps the most fundamental challenge of all.
Yeah.
When people lose faith in the government, the media, the legal system,
Mm-hmm.
even science and expertise,
Right.
it becomes incredibly difficult to address any of the other challenges we've discussed.
It's like we're in this vicious cycle.
It is.
Distrust fuels inaction.
Right.
Inaction leads to more problems,
Yeah.
and those problems further erode trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then you layer on top of that all the misinformation and polarization that's being amplified by social media,
Right.
and it starts to feel like a recipe for disaster.
It's certainly a worrying trend.
Right.
But what's fascinating, and perhaps a glimmer of hope,
Okay.
is how these three challenges are actually interconnected.
Right.
For example, economic inequality can create fertile ground for extremism and conspiracy theories,
Right.
which further erodes trust in institutions.
Yeah, it's like a tangled web of problems,
What is?
all feeding off of each other. And it makes you wonder, where do we even begin to untangle this mess?
Well, that's a question we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore some potential solutions
Right.
and strategies for navigating this complex and challenging landscape.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back to our deep dive into the political future of the United States. In part one, we covered a lot of ground, didn't we?
It was quite a lot.
It's a complex landscape out there.
Yeah, definitely. We explored some heavy topics, but you know, the goal isn't to get bogged down in pessimism. It's about
Right.
understanding these forces so we can, make informed decisions
Right.
and potentially nudge things in a more positive direction.
Okay, so less doom scrolling, more solution finding. I like that. Where do we start?
Well, let's revisit those younger voters we discussed earlier. I mean, they represent a significant
Yeah.
amount of potential power, but they need to be, engaged, mobilized. Turning 18 doesn't magically turn someone into a politically active citizen.
So how do we get them involved? What's the best way to reach a generation that's grown up with the internet and social media?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Traditional methods of political outreach, like phone banking and door knocking, they might not be as effective with this demographic.
Right.
We need to meet them where they are,
Online.
online.
You're thinking more TikTok campaigns, less town hall meetings.
Exactly. Think about leveraging social media platforms to spread awareness,
Okay.
register voters, and even crowdsource policy ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make politics more accessible, engaging, and relevant to their lives.
Maybe a little less, well, boring.
Precisely. Younger voters are looking for authenticity, transparency, and a sense of community.
Yeah.
They want to feel like their voices are being heard
Right.
and their participation matters.
It's not just about telling them to vote. It's about giving them a reason to vote, showing them that their actions can make a real difference.
Now, let's shift gears and tackle that ever-present issue of polarization.
Okay.
Is there anything we can do to bridge that divide that seems to be getting wider every day?
It feels like productive dialogue has been replaced with shouting matches.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to have a conversation when everyone is talking past each other?
One promising approach is promoting media literacy
Okay.
and critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
We need to equip people with the tools to identify misinformation,
Right.
evaluate different perspectives, and engage in constructive dialogue, even with those they disagree with.
It's about teaching people to think for themselves, not just blindly accepting what they see on their news feeds or hear from their chosen media outlets.
Absolutely. We also need to create more spaces for respectful dialogue across political differences.
Okay.
This could involve supporting organizations
Yeah.
that facilitate cross-partisan conversations, encouraging universities to host debates on controversial topics, or even just having more nuanced
Right.
and empathetic discussions within our own families and communities.
It's about recognizing that people with different political views aren't the enemy.
Right.
We can disagree without demonizing each other. We can have different perspectives without assuming ill intent.
Speaking of potential enemies,
Yeah.
let's circle back to technology.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool,
Yeah.
but it can be used for both positive and negative purposes.
Yeah, we talked about the risks of AI-powered disinformation and deepfakes. Is there any way to mitigate those threats?
There are several things we can do.
Okay.
First, we need to invest in research and development.
Mm.
to create more robust methods for detecting and debunking fake content.
Okay.
Think about AI systems that can analyze images and videos for signs of manipulation
Hmm.
or algorithms that can track the spread of misinformation online.
So fighting fire with fire in a way,
Yeah.
using technology to combat the misuse of technology.
In a sense, yes. But we also need to address the root causes of misinformation. This means supporting quality journalism, promoting digital literacy, and holding social media platforms accountable for the content they allow to spread.
It's about creating a more resilient information ecosystem where truth and accuracy have a fighting chance against the tide of misinformation.
Now let's zoom out and consider the global landscape. We talked about the rise of multipolarity
Right.
and the need for more international cooperation. How can we, as a nation and as individuals, prepare for this new world order?
It feels like a lot is out of our control
Yeah.
when it comes to global politics. What can we do as individuals to navigate these complex changes?
Well, for starters, we can become more informed about global issues
Okay.
and seek out diverse perspectives. We can read news sources from other countries, engage with people from different cultures, and support organizations that promote international understanding and cooperation.
It's about expanding our horizons and recognizing that we're all interconnected, even if we live in different parts of the world.
Right.
What impacts one nation often has ripple effects across the globe.
And on a more practical level,
Yeah.
we can advocate for policies
Okay.
that prioritize diplomacy, international cooperation, and global problem solving.
Hmm.
We can support candidates and leaders who understand that we can't just go it alone in the world,
Right.
that we need to build bridges and work together to address the challenges we face.
So it's not just about what happens within our own borders, but how we engage with the rest of the world.
Right.
Now let's bring it back to those significant domestic challenges we discussed. Economic inequality, climate change, and declining trust.
Right.
These are complex and interconnected issues,
Yeah.
so they require systemic solutions.
Absolutely. Let's start with economic inequality.
Okay.
We need policies that promote inclusive economic growth, create good-paying jobs, and ensure access to affordable housing, healthcare, and education.
So creating an economy that works for everyone,
Yes.
not just the wealthy few, where everyone has a chance to thrive and not just survive.
Precisely. This could involve raising the minimum wage, investing in job training programs, expanding social safety nets, and reforming our tax system to ensure that the wealthiest individuals and corporations are paying their fair share.
Now, on to climate change. This is a global crisis that requires urgent action at all levels. What can we do domestically to make a difference?
We need to transition to a clean energy economy as quickly as possible.
Okay.
This means investing in renewable energy sources like solar and wind, improving energy efficiency, and phasing out fossil fuels.
This sounds like a huge undertaking,
Yep.
a massive shift in how we power our society.
It is a significant challenge,
Mm-hmm.
but it also presents an opportunity
Okay.
to create a more sustainable and equitable future. Think about the potential for green jobs, cleaner air and water, and a more resilient society that's better equipped to adapt to the impacts of climate change.
Okay, last but not least, how do we rebuild trust in institutions? This feels like the most daunting challenge of all.
It is a difficult task,
Yeah.
but an essential one. We need to promote transparency and accountability in government,
Okay.
support independent journalism, and reform our electoral system to make it more fair and representative. We need to address the root causes of distrust, such as corruption, partisan gridlock, and the influence of money in politics.
It's about creating a system that people can believe in again, a system that feels responsive to their needs and truly represents their interests.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that rebuilding trust is a long-term project. It requires consistent effort, open communication, and a willingness to acknowledge and address past mistakes.
So we've covered a lot of potential solutions, but it all sounds pretty daunting. Where does the average person even begin?
Yeah.
How can we translate all this into action?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll tackle head-on in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Stay tuned for specific actions you can take to make a difference in this complex
Right.
and ever-evolving political landscape.
Welcome back to the deep dive. In parts 1 and 2, we explored the major forces shaping the political future of the U.S. Everything, generational shifts and technological disruption to global power dynamics, and those domestic challenges. We even brainstormed some potential solutions, but now it's time to get down to brass tacks. facts. What can you actually do to navigate this complex landscape and make a difference?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of these challenges, but remember, change always starts with individual action. Even those seemingly small actions can ripple outwards and create a larger impact. So let's break it down into some concrete steps you could take.
Okay, give us the game plan. What's step one?
Step one is simple but crucial. Get informed. We've talked about media literacy throughout this deep dive, but it's worth emphasizing again. Don't just passively consume information. Be an active participant. Question your assumptions. Seek out diverse perspectives and be wary of those echo chambers we discussed earlier.
Right. It's about being a critical thinker, not just, a mindless scroller. Do you have any specific tips on how to become a more discerning consumer of information?
Absolutely. One of the best things you can do is vary your news sources. Don't just stick to one outlet or perspective. Make a conscious effort to read articles from both sides of the political spectrum. Check out fact-checking websites like PolitiFact or Snopes, and follow experts and analysts who offer nuanced and well-researched perspectives.
So it's about being curious, being skeptical, and being willing to challenge your own biases. What's the next step?
Once you've honed your critical thinking skills, it's time to find your issue, that cause that really speaks to you. What are you passionate about? What injustices make you want to take action? It could be climate change, economic inequality, racial justice, education reform, whatever truly ignites your sense of purpose.
So it's about channeling that energy, that passion into something productive and meaningful. But how do you go from feeling passionate about something to actually, doing something about it?
That's where research comes in. Once you've identified your issue, dig deeper. Find organizations that are already working on it, learn about the different approaches they're taking, and figure out where your skills and interests could be a good fit. There are so many amazing organizations out there doing incredible work.
So it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about finding the right team to join, the right movement to be a part of.
And remember, you don't have to become a full-time activist overnight. Start small. Maybe you volunteer a few hours a month at a local organization. Donate to a cause you believe in, or simply have conversations with your friends and family to raise awareness. Those conversations can be surprisingly impactful.
Every little bit helps, right? It's about taking those small steps and building momentum.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And don't underestimate the power of your voice. Contact your elected officials. Write letters to the editor of your local newspaper. Participate in online forums and discussions, and make your views known. Those in power need to hear from their constituents, and your voice, combined with others, can create real change.
So it's about speaking up, making your voice heard, and not being afraid to engage in those difficult conversations.
Another powerful tool is your wallet. You can support businesses that align with your values, boycott those that don't, and even explore ethical investing to ensure that your money is being used in a way that reflects your principles.
Right. So we're talking about conscious consumerism,
Yeah.
using our purchasing power to drive change and support companies that are doing good in the world.
And finally, don't underestimate the power of community. Find like-minded individuals, join local organizations, attend rallies and protests, and build a network of support. When people come together and work towards a shared goal, it creates a force that's much harder to ignore.
There's strength in numbers. It's about finding your tribe, your community, and working together to create change.
Exactly. And remember, you are not alone in this. There are millions of people all around the world who are passionate about making the world a better place. By working together, by supporting each other, by using our voices and our actions, we can create a more just, equitable, and sustainable future.
So we've gone from exploring those big picture trends to identifying some concrete actions that anyone can take. What's the key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
The key takeaway is that the future is not predetermined. We have the power to shape it through our choices, our actions, and our engagement. It's not going to be easy. There will be setbacks and challenges, but it's absolutely essential that we remain hopeful, engaged, and committed to creating the world we want to see.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the political future of the U.S. We've covered a lot of ground, explored some complex issues, and hopefully equipped you with the knowledge and tools to navigate this ever-changing landscape. Now it's up to you. What will you do with this knowledge? How will you contribute to shaping a better future? Those are the questions we leave you to ponder. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.